Om Sarva Mangala Mangalye Shive Sarva Dishatake Sharnar Trambike Gauri Narayani Namostute. O thou most auspicious, the auspicious of those who are the most auspicious, consort of Shiva, Gauri, the golden one, of 3 eyes, we sacrifice ourselves and bow down to thee. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om Hari Om Hari Om Tat Sat. Namaste and aloha from Hawaii. Good to see all of you here this Saturday morning for yet another satsang, where, as far as Vedanta is concerned, we take up questions around Atma Vichara, or looking into the nature of the true self. The true self is not the ego, although the true self includes that, and the true self is not the Purusha, which is the true individual self, but the true self, Atman, is that universal self which encompasses it all. And therefore, the human being is very fortunate if they will only awaken to the fact that this perfect nature is there at the very foundation of consciousness, the ocean of consciousness, as I've been writing about lately. If you look on the new website, if you become a member, which I request everyone to do, you'll find all these new posts that we're putting up there, including my God blogs, I'm calling them. I'm working on a third one right now, and in conjunction with Saraswati, who's making images for each of them, composites and hand sketches coming out very nicely. So you'll want to look into all those. Are the current thinking around Vedanta in this day and time in this country. And other great posts are going up, like the Kali poems, Kali Ramprasad, ecstatic songs of Ramprasad, Kali poems, and also what's called the Encomium, Testament to Spiritual Practice, 58 verses. And yeah, last night I posted the Raja Yoga Patanjali Sutras study course. So much is going on in the ashram and the subtle realms, and we all invite you to take a part in it, especially in today's world when you can spend many hours there replacing other tendencies of the mind to go in different directions, and bring all this benefit home to yourself and to others around you. So we do that in person on Saturday mornings. I've made that a part of the wider public outreach and not restricted it to just the new website, so that we can always keep meeting here on Saturday and air our questions. So let's see what kind of spiritual delicacies we have that we can pull up from the depths of our thinking mind and benefit all of us and ourselves in this effort. So I'll open the table right now to things that you might have been reading about or come upon in the studies of all religions of the world, although we do center around the darshanas of India, like Vedanta, Patanjala, which is yoga, and Samkhya and Tantra, and the other eternal Sanatana aspects of India's wisdom, Divine Mother's wisdom, as I was just speaking about. So who's going to open up with a question this morning?
Babaji, namaste. This is Abhinay talking here. It's good to see you again. I was watching a video on this spiritual self-storage web class series, and I was wondering if you could talk a little bit. There was a lot of different subjects in this class series about the mind and its seeds. But I was thinking of a different question that I would like to ask in regards to this. When we have spiritual experience, do they make us a different person in the flux of time? And does it amount to something? Does it make our spiritual experiences more deeper if we continue on the path?
Okay, well, you're dropping out some, so I only caught part of your question, but if I can summarize it, I think you said that when we have spiritual experiences, does it make us a different person? Is that the gist of what you said?
Yeah, and do the experiences amount to deeper experiences? Do they add on? Do they enhance the quality of these experiences we have, or are they just all the same? Or is it what is the nature of divine reality and experiencing divine reality? Did you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, it wasn't so much a matter of volume, it was a matter that there's some feedback going on occasionally from Hungary, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think I have what you meant to say, and I can answer that. The one before the zeros, of course, becomes the story that we use for having experiences in the world. That Thakur Sri Ramakrishna said that all the experiences of a worldly person are like zeros, and in the end they add up to nothing. So that would infer that beings keep being reborn in the world to get more and more experiences, and they never get fulfilled or satisfied and never reach enlightenment. So there are hundreds and thousands of beings like that on the wheel of samsara that are going about their everyday life without extracting any essence from their experiences. But if you put the one before the zeros, which is, of course, if you offer everything to the Lord and Mother of the universe, everything that you do, then all of a sudden everything changes and all of your experiences of life become fulfilling. And a lot of people complain about not having any meaning in their life. And then when they find themselves seeking for freedom and practicing the yogas like devotion and study of scriptures and so forth, that all of a sudden their life turns and they begin to have much more meaning in life. And so that would be a way of answering that, whether or not you have that one before the zeros, or as the God blog I was writing yesterday is titled, do you have the net in your mouth? Means the fish that gets caught in the net of relativity and sinks itself into the mud thinking it's safe, but it's got the net in its mouth and the fisherman will soon pull it up. That is, death and karma and time is all playing against that soul. So Otherwise, there's a great freedom to be experienced. And in that freedom is all changelessness. So to answer the other part of your question is that no, a person doesn't really change from their true nature. Your true nature can't change. You're the same all the time. That is pure and perfect and indivisible consciousness. That's your true nature. But so Vedanta says that rather than change, it's a matter of false superimposition. Is that people begin to put veils in front of them of their true nature, and therefore cannot see the truth and begin to act other than themselves. So false superimposition, or vivarta, or what's called adhyasa, as we were talking about last week, is the fault of the individual who allows their true nature to be veiled. And we know that the veiling power is one of the three aspects of Maya. The other is the distorting power. Those are called avarana and vikshepa. So avarana shakti veils and vikshepa shakti distorts reality. So the devotee has to be on guard against that kind of covering power and always keep the true self evident and obvious and at the forefront of life. Then transformation won't really actually be necessary. It'll just be a matter of the witness watching phenomena rise and fall without any change going on. So another way of putting that is if you identify with the waves, then you get tossed about, as my guru used to say. But if you identify with the depths of the ocean, then there's just all peace all the time. So it's really a matter of how one conducts oneself, spiritually speaking, or dharmically speaking, in this life, in this body, in this world. So the Vedantist tries to think more in terms of non-transformation, that the self is always true, always pure, and always free, and the only reality, and everything else is just phenomena that tends to want to cover it up. So the practice or sadhana that one does is always stripping away these layers that tend to gather, like Sri Krishna's story of the ship, the sailing ship that can't leave port one day because it's got too many barnacles caught on its hull, you see. And so it's had too many voyages. And in those voyages, it's caught all of these barnacles have been building up on the hull of the ship. And so pretty soon it becomes impeded and can't move, can't sail anymore. So that's a analogy about the soul who's lived so many times, as Sri Krishna has said, and then begins to believe that the world is real and that rebirth is real and that death is real, when all of those things are just false superimpositions over the thinking consciousness of that person. So if the mirror has dust on it, you just wipe it off. That's all, clean it. And then the mind can see reality the way it is. Therefore, we have all the teachings of Vedanta in the Upanishads, many slokas about cleaning away the false superimpositions of the mind so that the true self is always standing forth and obvious and ready to commune with. So then to summate again, think of it more in terms of your Atman always being changeless, and that the changes that are going on, even changes of improvement and growth, are not applicable to the Atman. They're just applicable to the mind. That's why we chant that Om Satyena Labhyastapasa Yesa Atma Samyagyanena Brahmacharya Nityam. The self is realized by knowledge and moderation and austerity and veracity, all constantly cultivated. And when this practice is applied to the mind and it clears the mind, then the seer beholds the Atman everywhere and in everything. So it's just a matter of removing the impositions of the mind. As you were writing yesterday to me, which I haven't answered, but it's the mind that's responsible for all of that false superimposition. And it becomes habit-like. People begin to live in that kind of habit of thinking themselves to be sinners, or thinking themselves to be worthless, or thinking themselves to be unable, thinking themselves to be only a body in time, when they're really the Lord walking around on two legs, as Vivekananda called us. You're God walking around on two legs. So keeping that non-dual truth at the forefront of things is very difficult when this habit of the mind is always defaulting back to duality and even worse than duality, falsehood and so forth, superimposing over the pure Atman the impurities of the lower mind. So that's a practice that we engage in. It's a mental practice too. You don't have to go anywhere to do it. In fact, you're better off sitting in one place and realizing it, and then running it over and over again in your mind as many times as it takes to remove that false thinking until you're clear again. I like Sri Krishna's story about the painter who has his painting all set up there, and he's got the canvas and he's got his paintbrushes and he's got all his paints, and he's really inspired and he's working and painting, and he's so busy that he won't even eat, and he just keeps at his project. And so it comes time for him to clean his paintbrush, and he doesn't want to get up and walk over to the sink because that would break his inspiration. So he just he dips his paintbrush into this glass of water to clean it that he put there. But that water's become very brackish now because he's dipped it too many times, and he doesn't want to go to the sink to change the glass of water. So he puts some alum. He takes a little bit of alum and drops it in the water glass, and immediately the water turns clear again. Alum is this bit of matter that you can just throw into the glass, and it'll immediately take away the colors and turn the water clear again. So he doesn't have to get up and move anywhere. So that's an analogy of how you stay still, and this alum would be the non-dual truth that you put into the water glass of your mind to clear away all that brackishness, so that you don't have to put forth any effort to see your Atman anymore. It should all be effortless. You should be sure of yourself at all times and never doubt yourself. So those are really good teachings, again, through stories that help us to maintain our stance of non-duality amidst all the changing Maya. For the Vedantas, it just comes down to that one practice, really. Everything else is just will unfold from there. If the mind is in good shape, then the Atman can unfold itself, all its wonders. But if the mind isn't in good shape, it won't happen. So that's why Holy Mother said the mind is very important at this stage of the game. She meant the game of life and death and so forth. And she says it's the mind that will get you to Brahman. So that mind has to be in fine and fettled shape. So think about that non-dual stance that keeps it there, and practice maintaining it day to day. Go to sleep with it on your mind, wake up with it on your mind. Things like mantra are just really designed to help you remember that one fact. Even Holy Mother, who cherished the mantra and said it hundreds and thousands of times, sometimes a day, and gave it to other people to help purify their mind, even she admitted that it was only a practice. It wasn't a goal. So if you're just saying the mantra over and over again, then that's good for your practice. But the mantra is really just meant to clear your mind so that you know yourself, like any other practice. Who else can chime in here today?
Hello. Your humble servant. I have a question about the gunas. And how subtle do they get? I mean, it's easy to think of it as, like biological energies, but and obviously it's psychic energies as well. But are they energies? Are they more subtle than energies? Are they, at the subtlest level, are they vibration, pure vibration? How subtle does it get?
Well, when they're held in abeyance, is the English phrase we use. That's before the creation springs forth from the mind of the Mahat. Before creation even begins. So that's in cycles, of course, and creation means projection, of course. So we're using some of these words, we have to redefine them again and again. So again, we don't fall into old habits around thinking about them that aren't words that aren't really that accurate, especially to the Sanskrit. So when everything is released at the time of the new age, that is the beginning of a Maha Yuga, the gunas have been held in abeyance. So that's how subtle they are. They're in potential for to enact the next age. So in that way, you could say they're energies, but you might say just like you get up in the morning and you determine how your mind is, and you feel like not doing anything because you're tired, or you feel restless and you have to get out, you see, or you feel sattvic and you just want to meditate and have a balanced day and enjoy life and so forth. So in the same way, a Mahayuga is the beginning of Lord Brahma's day. You see, a billion years is one day, and another billion years is his night. So roughly speaking, give and take a few hundred years. So he gets up with the gunas at his disposal, and he's going to project the Mahayuga with them. So in that case, you could see how they are his energies when the cosmic mind awakens and begins to proliferate and send everything forth in a moment. It all happens actually in a moment, and time is rather insubstantial to the whole quotient. So in that way, the gunas are in hiding all the time, and if you talk about their subtlety, how many people know about them today? That's how subtle they are. It's only people who look into the Indian scriptures, and then when you look into the darshanas of India, the gunas are particularly seized upon and used as a teaching in Vedanta. And of course, they were there in the Samkhya Yoga, in the Tattva Sutras. That's like the only semblance of a scripture we have left from that time of Lord Copula. And we know some of those slokas mention the three gunas right at the beginning. So that's how subtle they are, both at the cosmic level and in the scriptures and today. If you know about them and you can trace them in your daily life, you can look into your mind and see what the word we would use today is mood. What mood is my mind in? Then you're a fortunate person who has a very rare method in which they can follow in order to be able to control the gunas, Trigunatita. So that was obviously on the mind of Swami Trigunatitananda, one of Sri Ramakrishna's 16 direct disciples, when he was choosing a name, a monastic name for himself. So all of that is about as subtle as you can get, when even here in the gross realm, they're hiding. So I would say they're always subtle, no matter what phase of time, what phase of time is going on at any given time. Modes of nature, energies, we grasp for words in English to try and explain them, but they're rather inexplicable, and probably only the witness is going to become aware of them and be able to watch how mercurial they are, how lightning swift they change, without the mind even detecting it, unless it's studying itself. As we were saying last week, the mind has to be turned back in on itself to see how it changes. When you're sitting for daily meditation, Holy Mother says, if you don't do it every day, then you won't see how the gunas change. If you do the meditation every morning and never fail, 365 meditations a year, then you'll be able to see eventually espy how the gunas change and how you feel differently each morning. And then you watch that, and once you know that it's going on, you're an observer or a witness, and you can then get control over those changes. Does that sound subtle enough for you? What I just said to summate is that it's at the cosmic level, they're subtle, and here on earth they're subtle, and in a spiritual aspirant's daily life, in meditation, they're subtle. Because most people don't think that about the gunas when they sit for meditation. That's actually what you're doing, Holy Mother said, is you're watching your mind change, and then you can master the gunas. Otherwise, how can you master something you don't know about? You can't even see it changing, and you can't even admit it's changing. So that's how subtle the three gunas, tamas, rajas, and sattva, are. Shankar's method for bringing them out of hiding is called sattva shuddha. He says, if you can get beyond tamas, rajas and get to sattva, that's good. But all the seers tell you that sattva alone is rather dangerous, because it's pleasure that the mind seizes upon. Like Swamiji saying, why is it that the whole world believes in going to heaven and in birth and death, and I don't? He's asking this question. How is it that the whole world believes in going to heaven, and I don't, because he knows heaven is sattva. It's just pleasure. And where there's pleasure, there's pain hidden. Where there's balance, there's imbalance. And so he would rather go on to sattva shuddha. The definition of sattva shuddha is that the person gets a balanced mind and they naturally feel inclined to study the scriptures rather than go somewhere or brood or go have some fun, you see, or something. Like Holy Mother said, Sri Ramakrishna and I did not come here to have fun. She actually said that. The Master and I and our children, our devotees, did not come here to have fun. So that would be zoning in on sattva alone. I'm not dissing sattva, because when most of the world is having problem with tamas and rajas, as laziness and restlessness, sattva is a good penultimate goal to reach for. It's just that you have to attain it and then use that energy that you get from sattva. There's that word energy again. You use that energy you get from sattva for higher purposes, all lending itself towards gaining freedom or enlightenment. How is Alex doing?
Thank you for asking. He might be able to join us in a little bit. Babaji, I do have a question about action, I think, and I've been trying to think of how to express this succinctly. But I guess, being householders, and there's so much always to do in the world, I wonder how we know the difference between when the urge to mobilization arises in us. Is this something that the ego is driving, or is it something higher? I heard somebody say that he felt that if he had a lot of attachment for the outcome to be a particular way, that he expected that was his ego driving him to do a thing. I just wonder if you could comment on that, because, as I say, there's so much as householders that always needs to be done, but I'm not always clear where that urge to mobilization is coming from. I don't know if I've expressed my question well.
Yeah. It actually connects well from Anurag's question about the gunas, because, you have to then, if you have that system of, that method, let's call it, of the gunas, if it becomes a method for you and not just a cosmological teaching, you actually begin to look at things in terms of the gunas, make it a practice. Like Bobby Naya's question, if you actually have to look at yourself and remind yourself of the non-dual truth every day. So now then we shifted to Anurag's question. Then you have to look at yourself, you have to look at the gunas and try and bring them out of hiding. And now we're on to your question. Now we have to look at what I'm doing every day and how the household is so busy. So that's the Rajaguna, isn't it? So it's driving you towards mobilization. Everyone's moving along by that overall energy of rajas. Krishna says in the Gita that those who are born in rajas, they circle, and those who are born in tamas, they fall, and those who are born in sattva, they tend to rise. So with the Rajaguna, you're always circling, and circling means not only in your day-to-day life, but in your 100-year life, and also in your rebirth cycle in samsara, you're circling with the ancestors and the humans back and forth. That's the kind of circling that's going on. So to espy the guna and see how the ego is reacting to it, how it's taking it is a practice. So that's why I'm mentioning all three of these questions, is that you have to put yourself into each one of those modes. That's Abhinaya is non-dual mode, and Anurag's three guna mode, and now your everyday life mode. You see, you put yourself into the actual teaching and you entertain it all day. You start out with it, Nitya Sarga. You start out with an enthusiasm. It could be enthusiasm to balance your rajasic nature. Oh, I'm too restless all the time. I think I'm going to take up a regimen right now to wake up balanced and balance myself in meditation, take a balanced meal. It's all balance, balance, balance. It's like you're walking a tightrope, and nobody's given you a pole yet, to balance yourself. And it's a long drop coming up below you, see. So you're just basing everything on this penultimate goal of sattva. So how it works into practical everyday life is pretty much the same as what was the last two questions I'm saying. Basically, non-duality, qualified non-duality, or duality, they're all crossing your mind like tamas, rajas, and sattva are. They're all changing in your mind. So in the terms of non-duality and qualified non-dualism and dualism, those are also going through your mind like the gunas, and you're taking them on in different hours of the day, in different cycles, like cycles inside of cycles. So you want to be able to seize upon the highest and best of them and make that one predominant. If sattva can be made predominant over rajas and tamas, then of course you're going to have a much easier time of it in life and body, and you'll be able to do everything in front of you in a more balanced way. Study a scripture or have a meal, as I was saying, and it'll be a kind of fallback position that you're not going to lose any ground with. So you just maintain that as the practice. It'd sort of be like doing without doing, or action in inaction, as Krishna calls it in the Gita. If you can bring your consciousness to the forefront, and you'll find that you can get much more done and feel much more satisfied about the doing than if you just throw yourself into the activities thinking, I have to get this accomplished. So again, it's about keeping the one in front of the zeros, that any bit of work you have to do, sweeping the house or making lunch for the kids, or working in the garden and so forth, whatever you're doing in that day, in daily life, you're going to want to be doing that with self in charge, and in a sattvic way, because that's the way you're going to get most satisfaction and fulfillment out of your activities. Beyond that, there's a kind of facility that one begins to attain, where one doesn't want to leave balance anymore, and can distance themselves from even the idea of restlessness or laziness. Those begin to be undesirable. And that's usually what gives most people what they think of as satisfaction, is to be busy. If they're not busy, they're not happy. But yet they get busy, and at the end of the day, they're tired, they're cranky, things didn't go right for them. And so these cycles of imbalance come around in that kind of way of thinking. But for the person who's always balanced in everything they do, and like your friends say, if the ego is driving me, you see, then that's going to be a kind of energy and time wasting device. But the seers and illumined souls are all the most efficient beings who have ever lived. That's why their names live so long. Jesus for 2,000 years, and Buddha for 2,500 years, and Krishna for thousands of years. They live long in time because they left a mark on the world, because everything they did was in perfect balance. In yoga, yoga is union, yoga is balance, yoga is practice. Any one of those modes is acceptable to attain to the goal of balance, sattva. Or as I said, sattva shuddha, even pure sattva. You set yourself up. Sattva is kind of a springboard towards spirituality, but you can't get spirituality from restlessness or from laziness. You can only get it from balance.
May I ask a follow-up question on this?
Yes.
Because this is a topic that is useful for me. When one feels that there are a lot of deadlines, and the deadlines are either self-imposed or even worse, imposed by external circumstances. You have to get all this paperwork done by a certain amount of time, or something that's essential is not going to take place when it should, or, things of that nature. It's very hard to keep the adrenaline from rising up, and to feel responsible, just really deeply responsible for the outcome of things. Is there a shorthand method of dealing with that? I mean, in the moment.
The internet has become unstable, so I lost you at, is there a shorthand way of dealing?
How to deal with that in the moment, in the press of deadlines that would have negative consequences for being missed?
Yeah, I think that there are different levels of dealing with that. The first would be just breathe, as they say. Take some time off, take a break, center yourself as many times as it takes, even in any given minute or 15 minutes or hour, is to get a better perspective on things, because sometimes getting so deeply involved in matters, especially matters of passing significance, not the matter of, say, freedom or spiritual practice, that you really have to keep at. But with these menial tasks that come up every day that we all have to go through, I think even many of the monks that I know complain about that at the monastery, having to do things when they prefer to spend more time in practice. Well, most people, non-monastics, aren't keen to do a lot of practice every day. If they just do a little, they're happy, and keeps the boat in the water and keeps the water from getting in the boat, as Sri Krishna said. So they kind of keep everything balanced in that way. But people who then have to go to work and do these lots of detail work and so forth, then they need to get throughout the day a new perspective, like maybe sort of like refreshing your computer when it got too clogged up with things. See, the mind is sort of like that. You just have to reset, and so that's a kind of it's a simple thing, but hard to remember sometimes in the press of intense work. that's the karma yoga part of everything. So that's a big part of life for most people. It might be the only yoga that some people are actually performing or working on. In fact, I've often said that if people took their work and looked at it as karma yoga, then the world would be a much better place. Make all their work an offering to the Lord. So, in that way, that's a simple method, and probably could be just described by the one-word mantra, breathe, or the two-word mantra, settle down, or the three-word mantra, take a break, because it's just work. And there's much more important things than that. Quite often, the work will set up larger events to happen in the future. The event horizon is all based on setup and work. So that's it's important in its own sphere, but it needs to be modified or attenuated sometimes when it begins to take over the mind and people think it's all important. Work and duty is the midday sun that's burning the very vitals of humanity. It's necessary for a time. After that, it's just a morbid dream, to quote Swami Vivekananda. You like that one, Kanya?
That's one of my favorites.
Because people talk about duty, 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 and work, 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 but it's just a morbid dream. It's necessary for a time. So that's how a very busy Swami Vivekananda, who's busy working for the good of the world, would look at the necessity of work. He himself used to say, if I go up to the Himalayas and just take a scripture with me, sit in the snow, have the fire of yoga with me, I've forgotten all about the world and the workplace when I do that. And that's how he would prefer to live. But then he'd have to go back down into the steaming valley, as Buddha called it. You know, he's up on the mountain, and then he's looking down to the steaming valley of work-motivated people, restless rajasic people, running their wheels around and around all day. No different here in America. It's just that we don't have many mountains to climb up and look down on from. That is, if they're there, we're not making use of them. So you have to create that inside of yourself. That home of peace that is Shiva, 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 and go to it. My mind is a jungle, so I complained to my guru. He gave me a machete, and he told me to clear 1 acre of the jungle, and then build a temple on that acre, and then meditate in it, and have it always as a place of peace where I can go. And then later on, you can clear the rest of the jungle. So you have to cut out 1 acre of peace or a place where you can go. And you also have to, as we know, clearing trails with machetes here in Hawaii, you have to do it every so often to keep that channel clear. But for those who are more facile, they can go straight to that home of peace as soon as they feel work and stress pressing in on them. They can just stop things. They have a marvelous ability to just stop things in their track, and then go and meditate inside for 5 minutes, and then go back to work refreshed.
I could do a quick follow-up. So
Yeah.
we're studying the third chapter of the Gita now at our Wednesday class, and Krishna said, action is superior to knowledge. But and then what we have to do is do the kind of actions that are non-binding with karma, the actions that don't create binding karma. So the question is, how do we evaluate that? I mean, we can't see so far into the distance to see the ramifications of our actions. So it seems to me we have to watch the guna that we're in. What other tools do we have besides observation of the gunas? Because that seems to me the most effective way to not create any pain-bearing karmas. But even though we don't have that, we're not so far seeing that we can't predict, rebounds that might come in a year or 5 years or 10 years.
Right. Well, I think one of the tools that you would have for that would be keeping that non-dual stance in your first and foremost in your mind, which was Abhinaya's question is my answer to that. I think that interpretation of the scriptures is also important, that action is not superior to knowledge. Action is superior to knowledge until you have knowledge. So you have to interpret Sri Krishna's teachings right. And he's only telling Arjuna that because Arjuna doesn't have knowledge yet. So he's showing him step by step how a person who is trapped in Maya needs to do action right. And very few people, and those people who are more masterful, think first and act later. Yes, aloha, Alex, good to see you. Hope you're well. So it's a sticky wicket, as the English say. It's a razor's edge path because you can jump into action like Krishna advised you, but if you're not seeking knowledge, then action just becomes the midday sun that burns the vitals of humanity, you see. So action has to be, Vivekananda said it so many times, action has to be done to gain knowledge. So you would want to, you'd want to look at Swamiji's teachings in order to clarify that one sloka in the Gita, where he's saying action is superior to knowledge. He's saying that to Arjuna, who's an active person. Later on, it comes clear that you get knowledge and then action falls away. Then even knowledge falls away when you get freedom, sannyas. So I would say that maybe you said we can't look ahead to know what's going to happen to us. Well, that's obvious because of the curtain of nescience, that's the wool that's pulled over everyone's eyes when they come to Earth. But you can look back. That's one of the teachings I've been giving lately, is looking back not to brood, and looking forward not to hope, but looking back not to brood is a good thing to do, because you're looking back on the Gita thousands of years ago in an age that's plagued by wars and everything too, and getting these teachings from Sri Krishna in a sequential way. I mean, if you take the 18 chapters of the Gita, that's the 3 phases of time you just looked at, and you've looked at it from the mindset and the third eye of a great master, of an avatar. So you're actually encapsulating everything into one reading of a scripture, and all the answers and all the secrets to spiritual queries and spiritual life are contained in that one act. So how to do action properly so that we get knowledge out of it? That was Swamiji's main main point he said it so often. And I started off with Abhinay's question saying that, is that, you know, you have to put yourself in that non-dual state every morning and then go do your actions, put the one before the zeros, and you're the one. And life is full of those zeros. So be the one. You're the one, brother, as we say here in Hawaii. You're the one in Pidgin. Well, we're coming up on the end of our hour here together. A couple minutes left if someone has a short question.
Babaji,
Yes.
can you give us a reminder, a refresher on why we're instructed to meditate in the heart? Just anything that comes to mind on that.
Yes, see, with a couple minutes left. No. Yeah, the essentials would be probably in my mind, or the way I would approach something like that is that I think it's natural for most people to meditate in the head. By natural, I mean not necessarily beneficial, because they're not ready to do that yet, not in traditional style. But everybody thinks in their head. Their brain is in their head. So their energy is in their head, and then it flows to their body from that. If your mind is energetic, then your body will be energetic. And same with lazy. If your mind is lazy, your body will be lazy. So that follows suit. So in that case, and since that's the fact, then people immediately, without meditation instruction or a teacher to advise them, maybe want to jump in, just meditate in the head. That's where consciousness seems to be. So the seers have come forth then to say that premature understanding happens when one focuses on the mind, which is full of impurities and indecision and doubt and fear and all the things that are in the mind. You don't want to intensify an impure mind. You want to purify an impure mind. So in classic traditions, and I can think of 2 or 3 right away, in Buddhism and in Vedanta, you bring the energy up the spine from the lowest centers and do certain practices like the yamas and niyamas of yoga that will purify yourself and your thinking process. Your lower mind gets raised up. And then it all leads to beyond the 3 worlds to the heart chakra. And people begin to feel free and devotional and begin to have some bliss and some peace when the mind ascends to the 4th chakra, or the anahata chakra, in the heart. So there's a great facility in that for the Dharma teachers have seen, the meditation teachers and so forth, that when a person meditates in stages like that and they reach the heart, that there's a great transformation that happens. And the Atman has its citadel there. The scriptures say, there in the heart where the Atman has its citadel, thou shalt meditate. And so one can also, since one's been living in the 3 lower chakras for many lifetimes, in terms of a worldly person, you can put the lowest chakra as earth, and the second chakra as the intermediate realms, and the third chakra as the ancestors, the Pitris. So those 3 chakras represent reincarnation, the 3 worlds. That's why we say Shanti, Shanti, Shantis. We want to try and bring some peace to those 3 worlds. So if a person who's been living in the 3 worlds for many lifetimes finds a teacher, and the teacher says, meditate on the heart, then then consciousness can be swiftly refined and taken up away from its habitual attachment to the lower worlds. It begins to even think in terms of transcending the ancestors, and begins to look into the embodiments it's taken and the families that it's been born with, and the problems that have ensued from that, the karmas that have been built up in that cycle. And it wants to be suddenly free of those when it encounters the heart, where the Atman abides in the citadel there, as it were. So that's why an authentic meditation teacher would tell the student, meditate in the heart first and open that up. 5, 10, 15 years is not too long to meditate in the heart. I myself didn't start to meditate at my third eye until a couple of years ago. I meditated at my heart for 25 years. I think in my case, my third eye was opened already, but I wasn't concentrating there. I was concentrating in the heart. So in one period, all of a sudden, I told myself, well, I think you can start looking up into the third eye now. You're safe. You're grounded. You'll be all right. So that's how careful one is to be with things like prana and psychic prana and shakti. One has to qualify oneself over a long period of time in order to create a foundation that one is stable at. And they say that if you're trying to concentrate at the crown of the head, which is where masters concentrate in meditation, there's a Rudra Granthi, there's a membrane that keeps souls from transcending the 6th chakra to the 7th chakra. And they keep trying to get the 7th chakra open, and they keep falling back to the third eye, falling back, and they can't penetrate that spiritual membrane. All of that's contained like in the Yoga Kundalini Upanishad, some very esoteric wisdom about that. Therefore, the point is that if you have created a platform, a foundation at the heart, then when consciousness is ready to ascend, then the Divine Mother will herself be your guide and safely take you to these higher levels of consciousness, like at the throat, where a person speaks only divine wisdom. And it's not so much actually either a matter of attainment necessarily. It's a matter of practicality. When any soul arrives at any center and operates from that center and helps beings, then it's a matter of facility and practicality. And so I think many of the greater beings that I've met and talked to about it have always said that they don't want to spend a lot of time at the third eye or the crown chakra because they can't do their work there. They can't fulfill their mission there. that's all about goodbye, everyone. You'll never see me again. See, I'm rehearsing for Mahanirvana. As Buddha himself said, have no hope for me, for the world, forevermore. I'm gone and gone forever. So if you're seeking a highest freedom called nirvikalpa or a sampragyata in yoga, then that's where you're seriously meditating on the third eye and the crown chakra, because you want to leave embodiment behind. You have no doubts that that's the best thing to do, and you may never come back again. You'll reach the videha mukti state. But as long as you're operating at heart and throat, then that's, like I said, again, kind of a qualified non-dual position where you can be the most help to other souls. And Vivekananda said to many of his young monks when he was there, he told them, please just give up one life. You've had pleasures, you've had work, you've done so many things. Now just give one life. Put aside your moksha or your mukti and get busy and do karma yoga for everyone, for suffering souls. So that can also be a good indicator of how souls who already have access to the highest level of enlightenment can position themselves at different chakras, if you want, or different centers of awareness. And even Sri Ramakrishna, and we'll end here, even Sri Ramakrishna said that he would come down to the heart chakra when he wanted to meet people. He said, when I want to meet the devotees, I will come down, my consciousness will come down from higher centers, and it will abide at the heart chakra. And he likened that to the drawing room of a rich man in his mansion. He likes to spend time in his drawing room. So Sri Ramakrishna said, there at the heart chakra, I can meet all the devotees and dance and sing with them and talk with them. So I suppose that could be a long answer to it. A short answer could be that if to open the heart chakra will be the beginning of spiritual life. Otherwise, it hasn't even begun yet. It's just all, and to hook it back up to the question Abhinay had at the very beginning, it's just all worldliness without that non-dual position in your mind. And so the heart chakra is then the best place to meditate according to the seers and the scriptures. And when it's time to open to higher centers, then let the mother be the one to determine that and guide you. May she, the primal guide, our refuge be. Om Sato Ma Sadgamaya, Tomaso Ma Jyotirgamaya, Mrityur Ma Mritam Gamaya, Abir Maeti, Rudra Yakshina Dakshina Mukam, Tenamam Pahi Nicham, Om Shanti 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 Hi. Lead us from darkness to light, from lower truth to higher truth, from the unreal to the real, from the illusion of death to eternal life. Reach us through and through, O Lord and Mother, with thy sweet and benign presence. Om peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. Thank you for your